Well, hi everyone. In our last video, we covered how to import text in InDesign after building a 3-column grid and how to deal with font, point size, and leading. Plus, we also dealt with a paragraph indent. All right, so we're ready to move on to maybe play around with this body copy some more. One of the things I like to play around with is a thing called an initial cap, or some people call them drop caps. The software calls it a drop cap. And an initial cap or a drop cap is something that should affect the first paragraph only. It should not affect the rest of the paragraphs. Do not drop cap every paragraph. So what I'm going to do is first I'm selecting by 4 clicks of the mouse my first paragraph. I'm going to take off my first line indent. Okay, you don't want to indent a drop cap. And I'm going to try to find drop cap up here. I don't see anything that indicates a drop cap, so I'm going to choose, instead of my character formatting control, I'm going to use the paragraph formatting control. This is something that, affects a paragraph. Now, if you look at the little pictures, you can see that this little picture looks like a little drop cap letter, and if you float your cursor over it, it'll tell you that this is how many lines you would like a drop cap to be set at. Now, this is a short paragraph, so one line doesn't mean anything because it's only just the same amount of lines. That's this line right here, so it won't get any bigger. Whereas if I go 2 lines, it will automatically put that capital to the top of the first line of the type to the base line of the second line. Now, this, which is more than 1 letter, so you can do a drop cap for more than 1 character. If you wanted to do a word drop down, that's kind of cool, or several words. Like sometimes you'll see once upon a time set up like this. That can be pretty interesting as well. Now, I'm not really caring for that. It's too small of a paragraph, so I'm going to put that back to 0. Oops, and set this back to 2. So that's a drop cap. Now, if you want to do something a little bit more illustrative, you wouldn't use the drop cap feature. You would just draw. You would draw it, and you could bring it in as artwork, and then you'd have to work with what's called a text wrap, which I'll show you a text wrap later. Okay, so this is the body copy, and I'm fairly happy with it. The only problem is it's a little bit long, so I may have to edit it. But there's a lot to be said about the letter K. Well, the letter Kaf, and how it evolved into our modern day letter K, and how and what we use our modern day letter K for. So I may or may not decide to whittle down that body copy. It's about 4 times what I really needed. Okay, and if you want to know how much body copy you have, you can select this body copy and go to Info panel. And I believe that's Window Info, and it will tell you how many words you have. So I have 477 words. That's pretty cool to know. Okay, now I'm ready to maybe do some designing. But let's, I usually start with a color palette. Color palettes I use based off of maybe some research I've done. Sorry, I'm zooming in and out here. And I need to go to my swatches panel, and this is where I build my colors palette. Before I build a color palette, I need to get rid of swatches that I'm not going to use, because if you accidentally use an extra swatch, that may cost you extra money at printing. They may have to create an extra printing plate for that extra color. So the first thing I like to do is I like to go to the flyout menu here, the submenu, click on that. This is again this menu, it's the little 3 hashes or 4 with an arrow. Click on that. Go down to about the center and select all the unused swatches. It will select anything that's not being used, or which, black is being used because of the type. You can't delete some of them, but I'm going to hit the trash can in the swatches panel, and it deletes those. Okay, you can't delete these other colors. Paper maybe, I don't know. Nope. These are defaults that you absolutely cannot delete. Now to create a new color swatch, and if this is a 2-color job, this would go on a 2-color press. It's cheaper than going on a CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, black, 4-color press. Cyan is a bluish color, magenta is pink, yellow is obviously yellow, and black is, K is key color black. But I'm not going to go on a CMYK press. Now, this is a 4-color indicator, but this only has 100% black. So I'm going to choose my second color as a spot color. So in the flyout menu, I click on it and I click New Color Swatch. And instead of CMYK, which would be cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which would go on our 4-color press, I want to choose a solid color, Pantone Solid Coated. This is mixed like paint, so it's a solid color. It's not little halftone dots of cyan, magenta, yellow, or black. Now, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for kind of a rich reddish brown. Kind of want to give the idea this is kind of an antiquated thing. So I just have to kind of look. Now, I'm looking for this, and what you see is not what you get here. The monitor always makes colors look brighter than print. So they actually print these Pantone Swatch books, which we do oftentimes have at the schools where they have visual communications majors. But we look at those and then we tell the computer, hey, I want that color. The computer always makes it look brighter, and then when you go to print it on a laser printer, it really makes it look dull and dark, darker than it would on a real press. So, what you see is not what you get here. So we're just gonna, so what I'm doing right now is maybe a little bit of a no-no. Okay, so I'm going to hope that that color there has enough brown in it that I can maybe get some sort of antique look to it. If not, I can always change it. Now, this is Pantone 7628, and it's coated, meaning going on coated paper. You can also specify uncoated if it's available. The formulas don't change from uncoated to coated. It just looks brighter on coated paper. So I'm going to hit Add, and it goes over here to the swatches panel. And I could, I suppose, choose more colors, but really, I'll wait. I'm going to hit Done. Don't go ahead and park lots of colors out here because this is a 2-color job. I can always tell this color to, I can always make this color change to another color, and it will apply it to my design. Okay, so I have my color selected. Now, what am I going to do with this color? Let me zoom out. I'm hitting Command minus. I can also zoom in by clicking and dragging over my document. Now, what you see when it's zoomed out is this text is Greeked. Don't worry about it. It's still there because when you zoom in, it's back. Okay, so it Greeks the text so that it doesn't take as much time to redraw the design. But it's there. Okay, now I'm going to go to Layers, and I'm going to, before I do anything, I want to start building some layers, and I'm going to double click on this layer, and I'm going to call it Body Copy. Okay, and this layer, its color is light blue, which means that any bounding box, such as my type box, see that blue box? That blue isn't going to print, but that just tells me I'm on the blue layer, which happens to be called Body Copy. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call it Background. I'm just double clicking on that to get this to come up. Now this by default will be a red layer. Now to move a layer, I just click on it and drag it. Okay, I want my background behind my body copy. And I might create another layer and just call it Artwork. That's my Artwork layer. Okay, body copy probably will go over the Artwork layer. So it's kind of cool because when I click on a layer and I can put elements on the layer that I want to in the design. Now I'm going to purposefully forget that I created these layers, and I'm going to go on body copy, and I am going to draw, maybe I want a full color in the background. So I'm going to draw a big box, okay, using the rectangle tool. I'm going to go outside of the cut edge of the page, which is the black edge. I'm creating what's called a bleed. A bleed goes outside the edges, and when the printer, the bindery guy who runs the cutter at the printer, when he goes to cut, he'll cut where this line is. That line doesn't print, by the way. And if he's slightly off, there's enough of a bleed. Bleeds are usually 1/8 of an inch. I've pulled this out farther. But there's enough of a bleed that if it's slightly off, you won't have just white paper there. Okay? So bleeds are important. Now, I accidentally drew this color box. Oh, and by the way, when you draw a color box after you have built a swatch color, it will automatically make it that color. Okay? So, after I've done that, I want to click on that box and I want to see, okay, it's filled with Pantone 7628. I don't need a stroke on it. So I want to bring that little square hollow object to the front. Okay, not clicking on the flipper. The flipper means, hey, make the stroke color the fill and the fill color the stroke, okay? You just want to click on him, bring him to the front, and make that stroke none. By default, oftentimes when you're drawing a box, whether it's a text box or anything, it automatically puts a stroke on it, and you want to make sure those are taken off because those strokes do print. All right, go back to layers. Okay, so this object, I've selected it. It is on my body copy layer, and how do I know? Well, there's this little box that lights up, okay? It indicates that the selective item is on that layer, and it tells me I can drag it and move that box between layers. There I go. So that object was on this layer, and it was above the body copy, and now, again, I select the object. It's a select then effect environment, select the object, drag it down to the layer it belongs on. There we go. Now, I want this to kind of have an aged look to it. I'm going to turn my copy off for just a second. I'm going to work on the background. And you can turn things off by clicking on these little eyeballs and turn them back on. You can also lock the layers if you're done working with them, but I'm not done yet. Now, in this background layer, I want this to look as if it's got some sort of fading like an old document. So I'm going to draw a big white box. Okay, so I'm going to go to swatches. I'm going to fill this with paper, and I'm going to stroke it with none. See how it always goes to the stroke? It always puts a stroke on there. Now, I want to feather the edges of this as if the paper's oxidized. Like if you look in an old book, the book pages are more light colored on the interior near the spine than they are the edge. The oxidation of the paper makes that it yellows the edge, so I'm going to try and mimic that. And I can do that by using the effects panel. Now here is the effects. Now, depending on what object you have selected, this panel changes. Now this effects panel has a basic feather in there. Now this is selected. If it's not selected, you won't see preview and it will not affect this. So I'm going to adjust my feather width to be much bigger. In fact, I'm going to put 2 inches in there. Okay, and I'm going to hit OK. Now this looks pretty harsh. So what I'm going to do to this background, let me grab my layer, is click on it, and I'll go back to swatches here. When I'm working with spot colors, I can tint those. It's still the same color, it's just lighter version of that color. Okay, now I don't know what this is going to look like in print. It may go dark. I'm going to deselect, I'm going to hit the W key. So this kind of mimics, I can still click on it and play around. Ooh, don't want that. This still mimics, let me select this one. It mimics that idea that it has some aging, okay? So maybe I'll do that. Again, I don't know until I print how dark this is going to go. So maybe test print at a small size, that way you're not wasting your ink, because small is going to show you the same color issues as large. And the printing can get pretty expensive. So I might test print this one smaller just so I don't blow all my toner or all my inkjet ink if I'm printing from my inkjet. Okay, so I got this nice kind of rich effect going on as if this is an old page. I'm going to go to my layers. I'm going to lock that. Okay, lock them because I don't want it to change. I'm going to turn on my body copy. Ah, there we go. It's much easier to read. Now, I did create those graphics that I had mentioned in a previous video, and I organized them in a folder, and now I would like to place a graphic in here, a graphic related to what my body copy says. My body copy mentions that cough, let me hit the W key, cough was likely originated from the Egyptian symbol for hand. And then the Semitic system used their own hand letter for the picture, and they named it palm of hand, and named it cough. Cough meant palm of hand, and then they took the beginning. Phoenicians and the Semitics took the beginning sound of that letter and assigned it eventually to a K sound. Instead of cough, the whole word, they just say K when it pronounces. It went through some Phoenician hands, then to the Greeks. Then the Greeks to the Etruscans to the Romans. Romans didn't really care for the K; they really preferred the C, so they didn't use the K. It's a surprise that the K is still alive. K and Q are K, Q, and C oftentimes share the same sound, but C is the preferred by the Romans. And then when this went to the English language, you had the Germans, the Polish, and so on, and they couldn't survive without the K. So the K was not favored over the C, but they couldn't survive without it. So and now we still use the K. In fact, we use it in many misspellings to market things like Kool-Aid, Krispy Kreme, candy corn, crazy cat, Pontiac Aztec. They're purposefully misspelled to try to be hip and cool. So the K is kind of hip and cool. So there's a little history on the K, or the cough. Now, what I want to do is I want to graphically represent what this copy is saying, okay, without going too crazy. So make sure that whatever graphics you use and whatever things you use to church up your design, or to make your design a little bit more interesting, relate exactly and directly to what you're saying in the body copy. Now, I'm going to go to my layers panel, and I'm going to choose my artwork layer. Oh, I better turn it on. There we go. And I'm going to place in my artwork layer some designs or illustrations and stuff that I created. So I go to File and Place. Now, I don't copy and paste. Don't copy and paste your text. Don't copy and paste images. Go to File and Place. Now, assuming I'm organized, I will find my images. I'm going to use the Hand K Shape TIFF. This is a Photoshop bitmapped image, which means I can colorize it in InDesign. My cursor will load up with this image. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to put your image right inside of any box. Sometimes you'll float over a box and I'll put it right in the text box. I usually pop those out into the pasteboard, then I move them in. Okay. Now, because cough was a backwards looking K, I'm going to flip this image. You see this shape right here? Kind of looks like a K, doesn't it? But I need to flip it because it was a backwards K during the time of the Phoenicians. Oh, wow, that was easy. I just clicked that little flipper right there. Awesome. And I'm going to bring it on over. Now, keep in mind, hit the W key, and you will see that the edge of the paper is what I'm going to push this one. I'm not going to have a lot of margin on that. Margins are really best for your body copy. You can really break the grid and adjust where things go. There we go, by pushing the margins. There we go. Now, this is bad because I have this problem with the thumb invading my copy. I'm going to deal with that in a little bit, and I'm going to do what's called a text wrap. But before I do, I'm going to colorize this. I'm going to grab the Direct Selection tool. I'm going to click on this object. I'm going to go to Swatches. Right now, the color of this object is black. Now, if I were using the Selection tool and I clicked on the object, that's a different thing. It references the box. It doesn't represent or reference the object in the box. So this box is filled with none and stroked with none. However, the item in the box, which is what we need the Direct Selection tool, when I click on that, the item in the box is black. And its stroke is none. We don't want a stroke on that anyway. Now, what I want to do is maybe make that color, that Pantone reddish color. And again, I might adjust tints a little bit to calm that down because this is, the focal point needs to be on the letter form itself. And this, I'm going to put the letter form right in this hand, so that'll help out a lot. So there we go. Now, this is what I would get if I printed right now. I hit the W key. Think of W as what you would get if you print, or what you see is what you get. W. Now, if I'm in a text box and I hit W, it's going to type a W. So just make sure you're not in a text box. Okay. Now, let's talk about text wraps. See this area in here? I don't really want my text to go over that. I want it to clear that. In fact, I might even have my text go all the way to the hand. Let me reduce this down a little bit, bring it down, and it'll wrap all the way down along this arm. Okay? And you're going, gee, that'd be interesting, but how do you do it? Well, how we work on a text wrap is we first select the object. See, this is my artwork layer and this object selected. In fact, I don't like that green. You can always double click on your layers and change these to different colors. So maybe I'll make that brown. I can actually see the bounding box now. But this is my artwork layer. I only have this artwork selected. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a text wrap around this. This is going to be really cool. It's easy. There are some problems that I'll speak about later, but right now we're just going to make this easy. Now, to get a text wrap, you would select the object that you want to have the text wrap around. Don't select the text. Select the object. Go to Window, Text Wrap. There's the keyboard shortcut. And we don't want it to wrap around the bounding box. That'll just give us a square. That's pretty boring. We want it to wrap around the object shape. Well, it's still not wrapping around the object shape. It's wrapping around the box. Well, in order to wrap around the object shape, we have to tell it on the contour options to detect the edges of the artwork. Oh my gosh, that's cool. It's wrapping around that hand now. In addition to detecting the edges, we need to specify the padding of that text wrap. Usually it's a pica. It can go a little less, but typically a text wrap is going to have 1 pica padding between the text and the object. Okay, there it is. Looks pretty good. Now, if you really want your text wrap to look really phenomenal, I'm going to go in the story of this. I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to use justify with last line aligned left. And what the justification does is it really tightens the wrap up. There we go. Wow, that really made a huge difference. Now, in addition to this, I want to show you something. See how these hyphens? Sometimes you get stacked hyphens. I don't see any stacked hyphens this time. But hyphens are actually a bad thing for most, unless you're in a newspaper, they don't care. But you want to go ahead and tell this in the paragraph formatting to not hyphenate the words. Now, words like Kool-Aid that already have a hyphen, it may, if those are out to the side, it will still have a hyphen. So you want to kill hyphens. Okay, and cool thing is it's easy. There's just a button right there. That used to be a really hard thing for us to have to do. All right. Now, with this text wrap, we do have a problem here. The skipping over things, people don't read this way. They read like top to bottom, and then they go over the next column and they read. So when people read this, they'll read and then they'll read here, and they won't even see that over there. So we do have to modify this text wrap. So I'm grabbing the white arrow tool, known as the direct selection tool. I'm clicking on the item that the text is wrapping around, and you see that little line. It doesn't print, but this little line you can alter where the text wrap stops and starts. In fact, I might just go ahead and have that come down, go to the hand. There we go. But then raise this so that there isn't any words that can get in there. Okay? Gonna hit Command 0, and there you go. People will understand exactly how to read this. Okay? I'm gonna hit the W key, and there we go. That looks pretty lovely. So there we have how to apply a text wrap, how to make sure that it finds the edges. Now, right now it says user modified path because it's no longer detecting the edges. I modified it. And I added a 1 pica wrap on it initially, but when I modified these edges, this is wider than a pica, so it now is empty. But you start with a pica. Okay, now I'm going to stop here and we will continue in just a second with a headline and getting some other artwork in here which has the actual symbol.